Coming up on our next installment of America's Hope, how do you get hope when you're going through moments of despair? Well, our guests will ignite you to start thinking about becoming a better you. We'll hear from the greatness activator, Natalie Shan Spelman, and the lady who talks about being a beacon of hope, Jessie Kretzer Graham. All that coming up on our next installment of America's Hope. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope, and we're glad that you could join us this hour. As always, we like to say that we hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family, no matter where you are, what circumstance you're going through, because you matter. You matter to God, you matter to your family, you matter to your neighbors, you matter to the community, you matter to the United States and the world. So tonight we're focusing on how each of us can aspire for greatness and become someone who goes around the world to do something good. Two people will share their empowering stories of triumph over trial, faith over fear, and hope over despair. They'll share how they have turned the pain of their past into power in their present and purpose for their future. Certainly, we can always take time to appreciate some advice and encouragement to help all of us get inspiration to endure hardship, persevere through troubling challenges, and overcome formidable obstacles to emerge victorious. And that's our focus tonight, victory through hope. And we begin with a woman who has served her country well. And she will explain her journey from combat Marine to unleashing greatness in herself and in others. Natalie Shan Spelman is known as the Greatness Activator. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in health science and a Master of Science in occupational therapy. She is the author of Drop Stress Like a Hot Potato. I love that title. And Natalie, welcome to America's Hope. It's so good of you to join us.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor just to be here, just to share my message. And I hope my message tonight will be one of inspiration and hope for someone who needs to hear my message.
I'm sure it will with all that you've been through. And by the way, as I said, thank you for your service. Look, as a combat veteran, what did you learn about the need to drop that stress like a hot potato?
That's a great question because the reality is that a lot of us who have served our country, we're used to an environment where there's camaraderie, there's a mission, there's a purpose, there's a team effort. We're united in terms of our mission. But the reality is that when we're taken out of that environment in from the military, especially when we serve in a war zone and we're back in the civilian sector, no one understands us. No one understands our pain. No one understands our trauma where we're transplanted from a war zone one day and the next day you're back home with your family. So in your mind, you're still in a war zone, but yet you are supposed to integrate and to function as if you are a civilian. And that's where a lot of suffering in silence actually takes place with our veterans, like myself, where I suffered in silence for years. I got married and I did suffer, and no one understood my struggles, and I didn't feel comfortable sharing my struggles with someone who didn't quite understand my struggle.
You know, you talk about your struggle, and a lot of times the saying on the street is, you don't know my struggle. What was your struggle to help you become the woman you are today?
So, in the military, as a woman, in the Marine Corps, we are a minority. So, as a woman, I'm in a male dominated environment where one of the few, the proud, the United States Marine. And I'm expected to stand tall and be strong, and pain is something we don't tolerate. We have this saying where pain is weakness leaving the body. So, as a woman in the military, you have to be tough. You have to be tougher than the men. You have to stand out. You have to prove yourself in a male dominated environment. But the untold story for women in the military is that there is military sexual trauma, which a lot of women in my environment did suffer. And it's something that a lot of us female veterans have witnessed our own sister Marines going through their own trauma. So you're coming from the military, you're dealing with the guilt, the shame, the PTSD from being in a war zone, and you're coming back home and you're getting married. And like in my case, I got married, had a baby, but I was dealing with a lot of trauma, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. And My norm was to put a smile on my face, be pleasant. I was here to serve everyone. But as soon as I got in my car every day, I was crying. When I
Mm.
get home, I was crying. And it was like a buildup of a lot of pain and emotion to the point where my body one day stopped working, which we'll talk more about later. But there's a lot of trauma that we don't really talk about.
You know, when you go through trauma, a lot of people think that you stay there and that there's no breakthrough. How did you break through and break out to become the greatness motivator that you are today?
I love this question because this question really tells my story. And what happened was that I was going to the hospital multiple times and I was just having pain in my body. And but every time I go, they were like, Mrs. Spellman, there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, yeah, there's pain right here. And they're like, all the scans and imaging indicates that there's nothing wrong with you. We don't understand where you're in so much pain. And I remember days when I would come home, because I'm a therapist, I'm with patients all day. You got to be professional. You're the one serving, you're the one helping the patients. And I remember coming home one day and I just went in the bathroom and I stood in front of the mirror and I remember just washing the makeup off my face. And when I looked at myself, it was a skeleton of a woman I did not recognize.
Mm.
I was I was just I didn't recognize myself. And when I looked at myself, I'm like, Natalie, how did you get here? How did you get to the point where you are so broken? And when I asked that question, I saw like a kaleidoscope of my life where I saw the toxic relationships I was involved in. I saw the miscarriages I had that I never truly grieved over. I saw the guilt, the shame. And in that moment, I shut it down because I was like, you are a Marine. You are strong. You're not going to stay in the moment and just deal with your pain. So in that moment, I ignored it. Well, 6 months later, I was in the hospital and my body on the right side wasn't working. I could barely walk. I could barely speak. And I remember the neurologist came in and he said to me, Mrs. Spellman, touch your nose. And when I tried to touch my nose, I couldn't.
Wow.
And I could see the fear in his eyes because I'm a young 30, I think it was like 34 years old. I had a daughter at home. And when he looked at me and I saw that I couldn't touch my nose, I couldn't use the right side of my body. In that moment, I got scared. I started to cry. And before you know it, I was there with my stepmom. And she made a phone call. And when she made that phone call, she called someone. And before you know it, a prayer chain started. But the powerful thing that happened was that within an hour, when they did the scans, they did all the images, I realized that my right side of my body started to work. I was able to speak again. I was able to move. And the images showed that nothing was wrong. I was back to full function, and the images were all negative. So the doctors were puzzled, and no one could figure out what happened. But for me, I realized that I experienced a modern day miracle. And asked the question like, why was I spared? Why was it that I had a second chance to live? Why is it that I have life? Why is it I could function again? And in that moment, I recognized that I have a second chance to go back and help others who are suffering in silence
Mm.
and let them know that there's more to their life than just going through the mundane routine things, that there's power, there's purpose, they can maximize their fullest potential, and they could live powerful and meaningful and fulfilling and impactful lives. And my mission was ignited that day because why was I chosen to have a second chance? And the pattern of my life, all my life, there were so many miracles we could talk about, but why was it in that moment I was spared? So that ignited my purpose.
Wow, that's quite a launch. Talking about it really is to have gone through that experience. You know, some people would look at it and say it's mind over matter, but for you, it's defined as something miraculous taking place right there in front of a neurologist, your stepmother, and so many other people who had been praying for you. The bottom
Yes,
line is here you are today living out your purpose, which is why I mentioned at the top of the show how you've gone from pain to power and to purpose. I want to talk to you
precisely.
more about what you're doing with that purpose. We'll take a break, and when we come back from the break, let's talk to you, Natalie, about the greatness that you're bringing out in others based on what you just told us with your purpose. I'm talking to Natalie Shan Spelman. We'll be back with more of America's Hope in just a moment. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm Kelly Wright, and I am talking to a woman who knows her purpose, and she knows the power in her purpose. She is Natalie Shan Spelman. She is a former combat Marine veteran. Again, I have to say thank you for your service. You went through a lot while you served in the Marines in dealing with enemies, foreign and domestic, and then even those things that grabbed you personally that became an enemy. Yet you are here today talking about the triumph. Now, Natalie, I understand that you've developed an innovative technique that you call focus-cising. Please explain what it is and how you're using it to help others find their purpose through pain.
Wow. So I'm happy to share that. What often happens is that we tend to run around with an empty cup. When your cup is empty, there's nothing to give, there's nothing to serve. You cannot serve from an empty cup. We hear that expression so many times. So, what purpose sizing is, we're coining two powerful words together. We're coining the word purpose and exercise. So, you're purpose sizing. What that means is that each morning, before you go out into the world to serve or to interact with anyone else, you have to fill your cup. You have to fill your cup with positivity. And for me, what that means is that take the time to center myself. I spend time with inspirational music where I just lift my hands and I just praise and I worship and I just fill my mind with things that are positive and meaningful. And it's just a great way to start the day. I spend time in prayer, I spend time in meditation. I think about my assignment as a person who's purpose driven, the impact I want to make in the world. I look at the vision of my life. And each day, every action, every decision, every word, everything I do is in alignment to my purpose.
I like that because so many people are bombarded with negativity from the beginning of their day till the end of their day. That means from sun up to sundown, they are going through stress, overwhelmed by the negative things that go on in life. And let's face it, we're all going to face something in life. There's always going to be that obstacle or challenge. It might be someone that you're having a difficult time with on the job. It might even be your spouse or someone within your family. But the bottom line is, if you don't really set the day and the tone of the day by starting off, like you're saying, purposizing, then you're going to live that day aimlessly, as I understand what you're doing, without any purpose at all. So where does that lead? Because we know that we have mental illness, we have mental stress, we have so many things that keep us sick and tired of being sick and tired.
I love what you just said, Kelly. I love it because as a person who has to deal with trauma, who has to deal with her past, and as a clinician who works in mental health, I recognize that when we are dealing with something emotional, some like an emotional distress or some trauma, we tend to be fixated on the issue. Our thoughts are ruminating, and we're thinking about that past event. And when we think about the past event, there's an emotion that's attached to that. And when there's an emotion that's attached to that thought, before you know it, you start feeling sad, you start feeling depressed, and you're just living in the past and you're stuck in the past. But what if you reframe that? Instead of looking at the inner problem, what if you look at the bigger picture?
Mm.
When you're focused on mission, when you're focused on purpose, when you focus on the bigger picture of your life, you don't have time to be thinking about what happened 20 years ago. You're not focused on the conversation of what someone said to you that you're not good enough and you're not worth it. You're thinking about you are an assignment, you're beautiful and you're wonderfully made, and you're here for special reason at this appointed time, you don't have time to be depressed because there's a bigger light that you're trying to get to. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting too excited.
No, no, please get excited. I feel like I'm sitting in a therapy session right now for myself, which is
Oh my
all
goodness.
good.
Wow. And that's the
So
difference.
Natalie,
This is
I'm
different.
so inspired by what you just said there because I think so many people living their lives are trying to live their best lives now, yet they keep coming up against the worst circumstances that keep them paralyzed in fear. Now, I got to admit to you, there are times even in my own life, and I try to be as optimistic as I can. Some of my friends call me Mr. Hope, but sometimes hope can be challenged by things you go through. And we were just talking about overcoming fear. So let's go back to that, and I'd like you to answer the question that I was asking about how do you take that purpose and help people develop the skill set and the belief set to overcome fear, which paralyzes them in their past and they can't move.
I love this question because fear was always the story of my life. I fear that I was never good enough. Good enough. I feared that I was never worth much. I feared that I cannot speak in public because I grew up with a speaking impediment. I
Hmm.
feared because I grew up in poverty, I cannot be on a stage. I feared that people are going to judge me. I feared so many things. But the challenge is that when you live in fear, like you indicated, you will always be paralyzed. You will always be stuck. But this is what I realized that because I am on mission, I can no longer operate in a state of fear. I need to operate in a state of love. And the source of love for me is God. So when I know my source is not me, it's not my internal thoughts, it's not my internal emotional state. My thoughts comes from a stronger force and it's love. So when you operate from a state of love, I know there's someone who's struggling. So despite the fact that I think I'm not good enough and I'm not worth it, the fact that my purpose is that I need to get on camera here, I need to speak because someone here needs to hear my voice. I'm scared, but there's a bigger power and my purpose is driving me to get on camera and to speak to a life that needs to hear my message. So I'm operating from a state of love, which impacts my actions, my decisions, and it motivates every single decision I make because my life is to make an impact. And fear cannot be the barrier for me to step into the call and the purpose of my life.
That that right there, as they say, will preach. Because no, seriously, there are people who watch this show and they're at their wits' end when they're struck by fear. And you just gave an incredible answer because, as you know, love covers a multitude of sins, including our own. And if we're stuck in that guilt and that fear, we're never going to break free from that. And the only thing that can do that, based on what you just said, is that love. Love conquers all. What a refreshing message that we all need to be reminded of because it leads us ultimately to hope. So, Natalie, do me a favor. For that person that you think that is watching this program that is in need of that boost to lift them up out of that sewer pit of denial and feeling guilt and feeling downtrodden and that they just can't make it. You said it so well how you came out of poverty, how you came out of setbacks, and now you have this incredible career where you're helping veterans, you're helping people. I want you to just speak to America for a moment because we're going through some very difficult times right now, divided on faith, divided in our purpose, divided in our politics, division, division, division.
I'm glad to share. I just want anyone hearing the sound of my voice right now to recognize that you are meant for greatness and so much more. You are here at this appointed time in Earth's history to solve a problem. And your impact makes a difference. You're able to impact and reach people that I'm not able to impact. You're here to touch a life and solve a problem that only you can solve. You're here to make an impact that only you can make an impact. We have to recognize that. Think about it. Why weren't you born 200 years ago? Why weren't you born, let's say, 50 years ago? Why are you born at this appointed time? Why are you here in this moment alive in 2024? It's because it is designed, it is destined for you to be here right now for a specific reason, to solve a specific problem, to make a specific impact, to change the world, to make an impact. Because at the end of the day, we are here for something greater. And your impact, your light is so needed in this world right now, and you cannot let it dim. And like I love to say, my favorite expression is this, and it is to arise and to shine and to be that light that you're meant to be. Because only you could be the light for that person who needs your light. So keep shining because
Ah,
someone is waiting for your light.
yeah, don't let that light grow dim. I love this. Thank you so much, Natalie Shan Spelman. I could spend more time right there talking to you. Uh, good therapy session for America tonight. For all those who are watching. She is Natalie Shan Spelman, the greatness activator, again, a former combat Marine, uh, taking her journey to newer heights by helping good folks like you understand the greatness that is within you. Natalie, thank you for being on America's Hope.
Thank you, my pleasure. And if anyone wants me to help you in your impact, reach out to Kelly or just I just want to serve. I just want to serve and I just want to make an impact. So thank you and I just pray and I hope that something I said today was an inspiration that can actually touch your life. Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate you so much, my friend. And you said it best, serve. Service is the rent we pay to live here on planet Earth. Again, thank you, Natalie. We'll be back with more coming up next. We're going to be speaking with someone about being a beacon of hope. Natalie just kind of led the way to that, and we're going to close with that as we come back next on America's Hope. Welcome to America's Hope. I'm joined now by a delightful guest who really knows something about the power of hope because she has a podcast which is entitled Beacon of Hope. Joining me now is Jesse Kretzer Graham of Hagerstown, Maryland. It's good to have you join us today. I should mention, by the way, Jesse, you're from my hometown of good old Hagerstown, Maryland. Welcome to the program, America's Hope.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Well, I had to invite you because when I realized you were doing this awesome podcast called Beacon of Hope, I wanted to talk to you about why that is so important to you. And now that I understand that you've launched it for this year, you started it back in 2020, as I understand, but now you've picked it up again to start putting out hope. Why?
Well, I initially was realizing that a lot of people would say that this next generation doesn't have the hope that we had when we were first graduating from college and going into the job market and things like that. And I thought, well, everybody needs hope. And I know what it feels like to lose your hope. The last thing you lose is your hope. And I just realized that I'm keenly aware of someone when I have conversation with them, if I hear that their hope is fading or they've lost their hope. And I have these antennas and I get right to work and I start to dig in to find out how we can bring hope to their situation. So that's kind of how it all started. I consider myself an encourager. And so the beacon of hope was just like that. That's what you have to be that lighthouse for those ships that are out there and they're lost, they're overwhelmed, they've lost their hope, they're confused, whatever. And they need to know where to go to get some encouragement. So they need to go to the lighthouse.
You know, I like the way you talk about that, being that lighthouse, shining that light of hope in the darkness of despair. In doing that, what kind of guests have you encountered, and what have they shared about their breakthrough from despair to hope?
Well, I would tell you that most of the first season, it was all centered around 9 to 5 rebels. So a 9 to 5 rebel is someone that has that entrepreneurial spirit. And no matter what, they know they just have to answer this fire in their belly, and they've got to take that risk and jump in. And then once they jump in, they encounter this roller coaster. And what I know is they just need to be encouraged one more day. So all of my guests in season 1 are entrepreneurs of some type. I interviewed restaurant owners. I interviewed my son Derek as a musician. But every single person that I interviewed Rob, yeah, isn't that terrible? Daltridge, who has busting boards. um, because they get on this roller coaster when you're going after something that you know is your passion, and your hope is constantly under attack, but you know you're doing what you need to do. So that's kind of the nature
Yeah,
of the guest for that
I,
first season.
you know, I get it because the entrepreneurial spirit is part of the United States of America. It's our brand actually, and it sustains capitalism, or should I say, fuels capitalism. And yet, in some circles in America, we find that that's sometimes viewed as a bad thing or a bad word. Entrepreneurial spirit, capitalists. How do we get to that?
Well, I don't know because when you really think about, I'm so immersed in the entrepreneurial spirit. I call the 9 to 5ers. I was one. I was in corporate America. I call the 9 to 5 workers that we need. They're the 9 to 5 heroes. But when you're a 9 to 5 rebel, because you have that entrepreneurial spirit, that doesn't mean that you don't work at least 9 to 5 or different or sometimes 9 to 5. But what it means is that you want to go it alone and take that risk, not have that guaranteed paycheck. And I don't see anything bad about that, but I can remember when my sons wanted to be career musicians. I can remember people in my generation might roll their eyes when I'd say, I know this is what they want to do, and I'm going to encourage and nurture this. And because I know that's where their talent is, that's where their passion is. And so that's kind of where it started for me. I say, even though I was a 9 to 5 hero, then I became a full-time stay-at-home mom. And then I started my own business 18 years ago when they went off to college. So I have raised these 9 to 5 rebels. I've been a 9 to 5 rebel. I am one. And in the economy and the world that we're in today, sometimes people are going into business because they can't find a job. And sometimes people are going into business because they're answering that call that they've had on their heart for a very long time. And they just can't silence it anymore. So they need me to be on those sidelines cheering them on.
So, take us, if you will, through some of the things that you've encountered in helping people get from step A and then implementing steps A through Z in order to look at themselves in the mirror and see the results and the outcomes, positive outcomes of what they've been able to produce for themselves through an entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay. So the first conversation I'm going to have with someone is when they're on the fence, typically, and they think they're ready to take this leap, but they're not sure. And the last thing I want them to do, and the last thing I want to do, is encourage them if they're not cut out for it. So I'm going to ask them some hard questions and just really test them a little bit to see that they've really got what it takes and that they really know that they're stepping out into some of the unknown. Usually by the time we have that conversation, they pass that test because they're just like, they have a no matter what. Like, I can't do anything other than this because I can just feel it in my bones and I know I can't sleep until I give it a go. So then once they give it a go, then they usually overestimate what's going to happen in a year, but they underestimate what's going to happen in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. So then I have a conversation to manage their expectations. And sometimes they think that this is going to be easier than going to work and getting a for sure paycheck at the end of the week. And I help them to understand that a lot of times in the beginning, we all work for free. But that's how you build and go in the direction of having the opportunity to be able to make something that you could have never made before, that you had a cap on in your typical job, let's say. And then there's the emotional roller coaster. And I help them understand that they have to work as hard, actually harder, on their mindset than they do on their business. Because the emotional roller coaster is going to happen. And you have to learn how to ride it out and how to keep going, even when you don't feel like it. So that's some of the highlights of what is expected that you're going to hear with every single one of them.
That's awesome. Jesse, it almost sounds like a Moses story. I'll have to start dubbing you as Lady Moses, taking people from their wilderness experience to their promised land, because undoubtedly they're going to encounter a lot of highs and lows and emotional turnarounds. Hey, everybody, I'm talking to Jessie Kretzer Graham. We're going to talk to her more on the other side of the break about how she got to her own hope. And how she overcame her own obstacles in order to become the woman she is today. That's next on America's Hope. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm talking to Jessie Kretzer Graham. She is the host and founder of the podcast Beacon of Hope. And what a better name. I can't think of a better name to shine your light and be that beacon of hope. It's a bold statement. It's a sincere statement from you, Jessie. And you've had the courage to go out and help people understand that no matter what they're going through, their darkest days, their darkest nights, and their deep despair, there is hope that does prevail. But I've got to ask you, since you're leading people to that place of beacon of hope, what got you there?
Well, I think that the best and honest answer to that is that I went through a wilderness of probably 12 years, losing a lot of things, losing my parents, having the death of a 30-year marriage. Just when you go through and you lose so many things, your hope is really under attack. And despite some of your best efforts to keep that hope alive, you can lose your hope. And there was a day when I was just this close to losing my hope. And I have faith in God, and He was there for me every step of the way in the wilderness. But I did get a taste of what it was like to lose your hope. And I think that's for a reason. How could I be a beacon of hope if I didn't know what it felt like to be on the verge of losing my hope? And then little by little, my hope was fueled. And at every corner, every step of the way, I had exactly what I needed. I had the right people in my life. I've been surrounded with some of the most amazing spiritual mentors, business mentors, just all types of people that have really spoken to my life. And so that's what fueled the light in my lighthouse.
Wow.
All those people and that glimpse of losing hope.
You know, Jessie, it's a journey that we have in life, and we do not live this journey alone, even though we go through our most difficult days seemingly alone. But as you pointed out, you have God there, you have people who come from unexpected places to be right there for you through some of your darkest times and moments. What a wonderful story about how you've overcome. And that's really important because as you share with people your Beacon of Hope podcast, they can see what you've been through. And, you know, people, there's that saying, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And I can sense from you that there's this deep caring that you have for seeing people become their better selves and living their best lives now. Am I getting that right?
Yes, absolutely. I say life is too short to not love what you do, right? And you
Right.
can see such a difference when you're with someone and you know they love what they do.
You can see the difference. You really can, because it brings a light to the face, a light and of hope to the room, and that's what you're doing. You're setting the atmosphere for people to succeed, but to
Hmm.
understand that realistically, hope is not Pollyannish. It's not pie in the sky. It's hard work to be an
It is.
overcomer.
Yeah, and I was wired from the beginning to be this eternal optimist. I've always seen the glass half full. So for me to see the glass half empty or almost empty, it takes a hard hit. It takes a
Mm.
lot. And even today, if you think about this next generation, people say, well, man, I mean, I know you've heard this. I'm really concerned for my children and my grandchildren. What is their future? What is the world going to look like for these next generations? And I was in that very conversation today, and someone on my right was saying in front of these young people that they don't have pensions, and maybe they will or won't have social security, and all the things that they might not have. And then I said, you know what, the world has changed. How we do everything is different. These young people have something we didn't have. They have access to information quicker than we ever had. They can learn so much quicker. They have access to networks with social media. We didn't have that. So they're just going to build their future, and they're going to survive, and they're going to thrive in a different way. But I can't be that voice in the room that's newly retired saying, well, good luck. No, I have to be that beacon of hope. That's that fire in my belly to cheer them on.
You know, I love this because I like the fact that you're cheering on young America. As you know, young America has really been through it. We're talking about Generation Z, and there's another generation that will come after them, and they just have a different way of doing things. Like you said, you know, they have social media, they have other things at their fingertips. AI is coming along, and but we're living in a very political, a time of political upheaval. We're in 2024, the presidential politics that's unfolding before our very eyes. People throwing darts at each other, mudslinging each other. Politics, what can you say? But what do
Hmm.
you see as being the answer for America through the eyes of the young people that you are helping to visualize how they can improve their own lives and the country?
Wow, you want me to have solve world peace too at the same time, right?
That's beacon of hope.
Well, that's right. So I would say that if we can help them connect to their passion and give them permission to work in their zone of genius, and then just encourage them and support them, that they're going to bring this country to a place that we've never seen, and it'll be better than what we could ever have expected.
I like that. You know, I like it, Jesse, because it's intergenerational, it's interconnected, it's interrelated. We have to be mindful of the fact that America is a great nation, not only for the older Americans, but also for our youth. And for every race, every tribe, every tongue, every faith, we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But we have to work for it.
That's absolutely right. Because when someone steps out, they're not just going to build something for themselves to support their own family, but they're going to employ others that have similar passions. And then those of us that are not, let's say, entrepreneurial or opening a business, when we go out there to do our business, I think we need to seek out the businesses that are doing a great job, that are getting started, and support them. Talk about them on social media. Tell our friends at dinner about a business that did a great job. That's
Yeah.
it. That's how it takes all of us working together. It takes a village to bring about success.
It's so important to hear your message at this time of year as we get underway with 2024 and all the challenges that are ahead of us. But it's so good to start with something foundational like having a beacon of hope. My final question for you, Jessie, is what's your hope for America?
My hope for America is that we would see that we are better together, and that we would not allow division, that we would just not entertain it, not believe it, not allow it, but that we would just pull together as if there was a pandemic or something. You know, when things are really hard, what do? We pull together. And that's my hope for America, that we would see that we're better together.
Jessie, thank you. Jessie Kretzer Graham, my hometown girl. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
My
my friend.
pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
God bless you. I really would like to thank our guests who appeared on tonight's program. Their messages are so on target. The focus, of course, being on becoming a greater you, a better you. I have a habit of saying good, better, best, never let it rest. Take your good and make it better, and take your better and make it best. That's what we have to do with our lives individually and collectively as a nation. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, that requires for each and every one of us, as we heard Natalie say, to get up in the morning and start purpose-cising our lives. And as Jessie talked about, to not let ourselves fall into an abyss of despair, but rise high to be that shining example, that city on a hill, that person on a hill who's waving his flag, shining the light, saying, I must be a beacon of hope. So wherever you are, whatever you're going through, take time out to just understand that there's greatness in you, and the power of that greatness is to let you come forth as a messenger of hope. Until next time, America, good night. God bless.
This is the light. 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 This is the light.
This is the light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This is the light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I want the world to know. This is the light of mine. I gotta let it flow. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. So happy to tell you that I am saved. I'm born again, delivered from sin. I'm living with the joy and the peace within. And this is the light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This is the light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I want the world to know. This is the light of mine, I've gotta let it glow. God is good, and God is grace, and someday we'll see Him face to face. He's given me peace of mind. He's filled my heart with joy divine. I've got that joy, 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 joy down in my heart to stay. I've got the love of Jesus flowing through me, and it can't be taken away. joy, joy down in my heart to stay. I've got the love of Jesus flowing through me, and it can't be taken away. I'm gonna let it shine.